What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Bunny Operator here. This is episode 2 of O.P.P, and we are joined by returning guest John Park, aka Kimchi Seal, former Rock Seal and Fieldcraft Survival media person, as well as owner of Redcell on YouTube. If you're not familiar with those, I'll go ahead and link John's Instagram information here. You can check out his page, as well as a link to Inside the Industry episode 8, where he was previously featured. But without further ado, John, welcome back.
Hey, happy to be back.
Awesome, man. Why don't you give these folks a quick snapshot of your background if they haven't watched the last video?
Prior military in the Korean Navy, the Korean equivalent of U.S. Naval Special Operations. It's about 5 years of service, so not very long. Did nothing special. And now I currently work for Fieldcraft Survival. I'm the head of media. Just having a blast.
Awesome. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get right into it here. Let's go to your main squeezes, or the introduction phase of O.P.P. What is your favorite and current long gun and pistol right now?
I don't have a favorite because, I mean, it's my only one.
Sure.
I
Totally
can't
understand.
have a favorite.
And for you folks who are watching or haven't watched the last video, John's reintroduction into American firearms ownership is based upon his return back to America, basically, and his leaving of the Korean military. So this is John's kind of a newbie / not newbie, if that makes any sense.
It's weird.
So so we're gonna join his journey and see how it goes. Go ahead, man.
So I currently own a Noveski.
Nice.
It's a 14.5 inch, but obviously because of the NFA, the flash hider is welded on. It's what they call bazooka green. I just fell in love with the color.
Mm-hmm.
It was super expensive. I went in wanting BCM because I wanted something lighter, but I just really dig the green on this bad boy. So I picked it up. It was super heavy. I don't like heavy stuff, but at the same time, it just felt really solid, and it felt like something that I could kind of throw around and own for a very long time, and it won't break down. And I just knew Noveski to be Noveski. So I went with this. We can talk about the setup a little bit.
Go for it.
Oh, you want to?
Yeah, go for it. Dive into the setup. Tell us why you chose things the way you did, man.
I mean, I try to go for the minimalist setup, if you could call it that. So from butt to front, it's just a Magpul butt stock, nothing special. Nothing special. I have the EOTech on a Unity fast riser mount, a BCM foregrip. This is a fake end gall, by the way.
Nice.
Which actually works in its zeros, and it does have IR capabilities, which is interesting. And it actually holds a zero. So I'm not doing long range work anyway, especially on this bad boy. So I actually don't mind that it's fake, and I don't own nods. So, or not yet. So I don't feel the need to upgrade to an actual Viz or IR laser. And then I have a Surefire flashlight. I forgot what the model is called, but the looms aren't that high. That's on purpose because if you have high looms, or not looms, what do you call it?
Candela.
High candela. It can actually flash back on you and blind you when you're trying to blind the other person. So I purposefully chose lower candela, lower brightness.
And
That's pretty much
you're
it.
doing that more towards indoor clearing kind of thing.
For sure, for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, because I mean, this doubles as a range gun and a home defense
right.
rifle. So I don't want to blind myself because all my walls are white, and I know I'll blind myself if it's super bright. So I didn't want to do that. And it's set up in a way I can just kind of move my thumb and just have a pressure switch rather than having it on the rail because I don't want to ND my light.
Sure.
So yeah, super simple setup, nothing flashy. I do have this very minimalist GBRS belt, or not belt, sling, excuse me. And I know there's a lot of discussion about where to mount your sling. I prefer mounted to the back, where a lot of people, even within the same unit, discuss what's better for their own setup. But I think it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. If it's not bothering you when you're trying to maneuver the gun around and actually manipulate the gun, yeah, it really doesn't matter.
I agree. That's actually exactly how I run my sling too, with the QD point closer to the barrel nut, and then my the rear half on the opposite side of my shoulder, my cheek belt. Yeah. That's exactly how I run my setups. Yeah. And that's again, it's personal preference, folks. Same thing with his Lumen and Candela preference on his M300, I think it is. And it's simply, use what you got based on what and what you need it for. There's no need to chase the Gucci and the hype that's out there, really. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I mean, just like John's situation, he's using a fake end goal. It's not like a lot of people can get a real end goal right now anyways, right?
Yeah.
But like he said, he's tested it and it works for him, so it works for him. So that there's a lesson to be learned there. But go ahead and continue.
I mean, I put this fake one on because I don't want to have to adjust my grip. I'm used to having to grip something at the top. So if it's just bare, I mean, it really doesn't matter. It'll feel the same, but I just wanted something there as a placeholder until I actually get a actual IR laser. So
it also serves as a training aid for you right now.
For sure.
Basically, yeah. Awesome. Totally. Preference of EOTech versus any other type of dot. Why the EOTech?
mean, I prefer EOTech and Aimpoint. I like both. I just, for close quarters, I just feel like the EOTech, it just has a bigger window, so I prefer it, but I don't think there's one's overtly better than the other. So I don't know. I grew up with it within the military, so I guess it just kind of, I'm biased towards EOTech.
Sure.
But I do understand they used to have certain problems in terms of different temperatures and losing zero and so there were some parallax issues on EOTechs, and I haven't used the Aimpoint T2 in the military, but I've used it in the civilian sector, and
sure.
And I really liked it for sure. And the battery life on T2 goes forever. So I like both, but right now I just have the EOTech on here. And it's just heavier, so I might switch it later on, but right now it just serves its purpose.
Yeah, I tend to go back and forth between them. I have both setups, EOTechs and Aimpoint T2 and Comp M5s, really. And you can use both fairly quickly. They're about the same, really, and it just boils down to what just feels right for that setup that you're using. That's really what it boils down to. Like, I wouldn't put an EOTech on, like, let's say my 16-inch rifle or so, because I think that it's more of a weight balance thing for me. Like, I would rather put a lighter dot to change that balance of the weight back a little bit. But on a shorter gun, like my Mach 18 rather, I'll have an EOTech on there because it's short enough, and I've saved some of that barrel weight so I can have a slightly heavier optic. Trade-off, pros and cons. Battery life thing, really, if you're using that particular setup enough, when that battery's going to die. You just have a maintenance schedule, right? So it's just like when you guys were in the teams, I'm sure you had a maintenance schedule of when you would just swap your stuff out.
Sure.
So how much of that is influenced from your military days?
I mean, we didn't own the Veskies in the military,
Right,
so
right.
I wasn't influenced in that decision. But at the same time, we're always using AR platforms anyway, so it's not that much of a crossover or that much of a transition. So in the setup itself, for sure, it's influenced by my previous unit, especially the EOTech. We're modeled after U.S. NSW,
I see.
U.S. Navy SEALs. So U.S. SEALs are kind of known to use EOTechs. They do use T2s. I'm not saying one's obviously better than the other, but more often than not, they're using EOTechs, and we kind of followed through that tradition.
I see.
But we also use T2s as well because we've seen the benefits of both.
Right.
But I just grew up using this particular one. So it was just an easy transition. I knew how it worked, and it just felt right in my hand, or when I'm actually trying to manipulate it. Not that I'm manipulating all the time. I'm used to the reticle and how I use it in terms of actually using the firearm. So it was a super easy decision. Engol as well, like now that we had Engols in the SEAL teams or the Korean SEAL teams, we used not Engol, the previous one from
the PECs or
PEC 15s.
Yeah.
We had the PEC 15s. So I actually prefer the PEC 15s, but even though this has a smaller signature, but right now, because this is sort of the future, I just kind of put this thing on here as a placeholder. Surefire is pretty standard, along with certain other companies.
Sure.
But I just grew up using Surefire, so it was an easy transition. When it comes to slings, I think the trend is going towards something more simplistic and just low profile. So I stuck with that. I mean, I won't say it's perfect, but it's super light. It was a no-brainer for me, especially with the heavy gun. I just felt like it was the right choice. And I support those guys. I love all the content they're pushing out. They're super cool guys. And I just kind of taped everything up. I grew up shooting video, always on set, always using gaff tape. So I use gaff tape for taping up the slack on the slings.
Right.
That's
important, man. Tie up the loose ends. That's a transfer of other industry secrets into this industry, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Your selection of the flash hider, was that on the rifle when you acquired it, or is that something you put on after?
It was welded on when I acquired it. It's dead air.
Three-prong, yeah. Do you have a preference for muzzle devices at this time, or that's just whatever it came with?
The ones we had in the military, it was Surefire. But I don't have a preference, not because I liked only Surefire, but because that was the only one I used. So I don't have a reference. Sure. I mean, that's my only point of reference, and I haven't used anything else. But this has, it suppresses that flash super well. I haven't seen it. Some of the other guns that I actually, because I'm the one behind the camera a lot of times, some of the ones that I see and that other people are using, there's a huge flash, even in daylight. So yeah, I haven't seen one when I used it. So it's been really
the Surefire 3-prongs, or the 3-prong and 4-prong variants tend to be pretty good at flash mitigation, assuming they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Their times dead air ones are pretty good for that. So I think you're completely fine there. That's cool, man. It's cool. All right. Let's see here. Anything else on that feature I want to talk about? Oh, VFG, vertical grip. Was that preferential over the AFG type or hand stops?
I mean, I haven't used a lot of different ones. This was just the one that I kind of grew up using. So
Sure.
yeah, it was just a easy transition for me. And maybe I should start using a lot more different stuff.
It's up to you, man. It's kind of hard to beat a vertical grip, really.
Yeah.
I think the biggest gripe and the reason why a lot of folks have gone to the hand stop is just for lower profile, because it is like a dong that's kind of out there, but you're getting that ergonomic straight vertical grip when you're actually clamping on to the handguard, and that's hard to beat, and realistically in the US a lot of people go for the hand stops because on some other guns like shorter guns, and they have to get past the ATF ruling, or that's pretty much really what it boils down to. But I think for the most part, in my preference, if I could and I can get away with the weight penalty, then I would go VFG, and that's just my thing there. But it's like what I said earlier, where it depends on the gun and the setup. Really, it's a balance thing, really, for me.
Sure.
Yeah, right on, man. No, pretty sweet setup. Pretty sweet, man. Not a bad first pick. First rifle on your time back.
I definitely like it. I mean, I've been shooting a bunch, and it definitely runs like a well-oiled machine. So literally.
Yeah, I'll have to get the specs on that particular one too, because I know that Noveske had their own intermediate gas system for a little while, but I'm not sure if that's a mid or if that's their proprietary gas system. But I mean, when you say that to me later, I'm sure I'll check it out. But yeah, I mean, I imagine you probably shoot super smooth, Noveske, man, tried and true.
Yeah,
there you go. What about your pistols, man? Unless you got something else to say about that rifle war.
I mean, I have my pistol right here at the SIG. I mean, this was gifted to me.
Oh, really?
By Mike. Yeah, so super simple setup. I have a Surefire. What is this called? 300 something.
Yeah, the X300U. I think.
Yeah, X300U. Yeah. Sorry, I'm terrible at nomenclature.
It's all right.
Because in the military, we're issued a lot of stuff.
Right.
So we're not gearheads as much as people would think.
Right.
Even though we constantly use it and we know how to use it, it's just the nomenclature we don't always memorize.
Oh, I get it, man. It's a different culture. But, it's like I said, man, you get to learn along with us. We get to watch your growth. I mean, before we know it, the next time that you come back on the channel for something else, you'll probably be like throwing nomenclature out the ass that I wouldn't even know. And you're pretty much in the industry right now. It's going to happen, bro.
Yeah, for sure. I never ran a red dot on a pistol in the military. So it's my first time. I like it. The initial transition was kind of difficult because the dot is like floating around all over the place and very jittery looking. So even though I felt like I was stable when it came to iron sights, when I transitioned over to a red dot, the initial jitter made me feel not very confident about my shooting ability right off the bat. And I also kind of screwed up the installation of it where it came loose. I didn't use Loctite on it. Okay. So that messed with the initial kind of train up in terms of learning my weapon system, because I'm constantly training on this. I think after I received it, I put about 2,000 rounds through it already within the span of like a month and a half. So a decent amount, not a whole lot, but a decent amount. And yeah, this initially came loose and I had to tighten it. Yeah, there was one of those days where I was shooting and my aim was constantly off and I didn't know what was going on. And I came back home and I was kind of looking through everything and I realized this was kind of wobbling. Yeah, the Delta Point Pro, super cool. Again, like I've never used a red dot in the military, so was really interesting, kind of getting used to a red dot on a pistol.
Yeah, it's also kind of interesting that that's the new optic. That setup is pretty much what the M17, M18 program is right now too. So yeah, that red dots for you folks that are starting out too, they really amplify human movement. You know, it's just like kind of on a long gun too, except long gun you have more points of contact. But on a pistol, if your hands are a little bit shaky, you're gonna see that. You're gonna see every movement, and it's not to state that when you actually break that trigger that you're not on target. You just see everything after the fact as well, and that's what John's talking about. And for if you're not acclimated to red dots, or somebody that's working with you isn't explaining that to you, that I can understand how John didn't feel as confident, how you didn't feel as confident when you were starting out. But you know, I take it those jitters are gone now.
You're probably a little bit. Now. Yeah, I'm definitely getting used to it. Definitely getting used to it. It's super fun. I really like shooting on red dots now.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ever going back to iron sights. Not that I'm not practicing on iron sights, but if I had the option, I would always choose a red dot.
That's pretty much how most people are when once they transition over, you know, because it becomes natural again. Because you think about the way that that animals, and actually humans and animals, perceive threats as we're threat focused, right? We're always staring at whatever it is that we're engaging or that's coming after us. But through firearms training and using iron sights, we're trained to look at a different focal plane other than the target. And that's what the red dot allows us to do, is to come back to our natural instinct.
For sure.
So it's kind of like when you're learning hand-to-hand combat at first, everything's kind of weird until you're like, oh yeah, it's just a natural movement, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, everything clicks, and then it makes sense again, because that's naturally what your body is wanting to do, really. So yeah, that's legit, dude. That's the gun you carry right now?
I actually do carry this from time to time. So I've been here, I'll bring this over. Hold on. So I've been testing multiple ways of carrying it. I mean, this seems like a plug, but
are you allowed to talk about that?
Oh wait.
Yeah, it's like I've seen that advertisement before.
Yeah. So this actually barely fits inside. So I've taken the red dot off and then carried it before, like this. And I've also carried it inside our holster. Again, it seems like a plug, but I just want to know the products that we're trying to sell anyway, because I'm the one behind the camera. And it's super seamless. And again, it's a huge gun, especially with the red dot. And I had at one point, the only magazine I had was an extended mag. So I'll bring it over. I should have had this prepped.
It's all right.
So it's filled right now. It was so the extended mag, if I insert it, it literally sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
So trying to carry this was super awkward. But when I was first carrying it, it was still during the winter time. It was super still cold, so I was wearing a jacket all the time, so it wasn't hard to conceal at all. But now I've went away with the extended mag, and then I have a shorter mag that kind of ends at where the mag well ends.
Nice. That's standard 17 round full size mag, I take it.
Yeah. So that's been helpful, but it's still too big. So I've been meaning to transition over to a Glock, which is the primary handgun or pistol that we used in the Korean SEAL teams.
I see. So it's a platform you're really familiar with.
Yeah, we first started with the 226. Right. So I started off I won't even say career because it was only 5 years, but I started off my military service with a 226. And then we transitioned over to Glocks, and I really do like Glocks. But at the same time, like, this thing shoots like, it feels like it's on rails. I really like what SIG's doing recently. They've been doing a super nice job in terms of pistols. I'm not really so sure about their carbine, but uh, but their pistols are super nice. I'm interested in shooting their new M5s, but
Mhm.
some of the carbines that I've seen, I haven't really been a fan. But pistols, I'm definitely really intrigued, and I love this for sure.
What you can do is either get the compact version of that, or
Mhm.
just get the exchange kit and just swap that FCU out. Right, that's
Yeah,
also an
yeah,
option for you.
yep,
Um, or or just simply get a Glock and just have both.
yeah. That's
There's
what I
nothing
plan
wrong
on
with
doing. Yeah,
that. Right on, man. This is actually quite an entertaining OPP because I mentioned earlier too that how you're kind of a newbie but not really a newbie, but just into this culture. And this is a super fun conversation for me because it's like I'm watching your thought processes and your development as you're going on. I think that's like super fun and it's like cool.
yeah,
It's gun guy talk right now that's
yeah.
going
This
on.
is literally like these are my like first personal firearms ever, like personally owning one. So
Right.
it's super interesting for me, and it's super fun trying to set all this up, kind of reminiscing about what I used to do within the military.
Right.
So it's been really interesting, and even the application of um, like there's a whole reasoning behind why I don't use OPVOs. Not that there's definitely a time and place for it, but there's a reason why I go for a red dot and there's no magnification. The most I'll do is a 3x, a G33 on a Unity mount.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I'm generally not. I'm not opposed to it, but I generally don't run an LPVO. So
Why is that?
Um, yeah, it'd be stupid to say that and then not mention why. But the reasoning behind that is one, I don't own a lot of land. So there's no long distance shooting that I'm doing,
Sure.
even for target ID, which in a civilian application, that's the only reason why you would use an LPVO or have a magnification to target ID. Because if you're shooting someone from far away, you better have a damn good reason why you're shooting them anyway.
Right.
So I don't want to be pointing my weapon with an LPVO on, even if I just wanted to target ID them, right? So because I don't want to be seen pointing that weapon at someone just to target ID by some witness that doesn't know what I was doing,
Sure.
that didn't know what I was doing.
Sure.
So for my intents and purpose as a civilian who doesn't own a lot of land, who lives in a semi-urban environment, I just want to go with something that I can target ID at close distance.
Totally understand. So you're talking about it from a philosophy of your personal use for what that rifle is intended for, right? And for you,
Mhm.
that is your general one and gun rifle for now, right? So I
Yeah.
totally understand that, and nobody can fault you for that, honestly. It's not like you have where it's like me where I'm experimenting with multiple different setups and I have LPVOs on other things. But no, you're absolutely correct. I totally understand that. I think that if I have that dedicated in my home rifle, it's definitely going to be some type of like CQB type setup, I would say. Let's move on to the rest of the equipment and gear, your support line equipment, your belt system, plate carrier, chest rigs. What else you got?
Place this on the ground. This is my belt. It's a GBRS belt. It's the first gen version. So on their initial release, I grabbed this one. You can differentiate the OG version and the second generation version by this little tab right here.
Is that
But
a like a Tigris tab?
yeah,
Plastic. Okay, interesting. That's for rigidity.
yeah, but I think this was just for branding
I see.
purposes. They went away with it. They cut it so that it's a little seamless because this was probably bugging the shit out of a lot. Yeah, it's super minimalist. I don't even have what is it, a dump pouch. on it. I used to have one on my previous belt, which was a Ronin TF belt. Yeah, that one was a lot more bulky. I used to have a lot more things on it, but for my intents and purpose as a civilian, I just feel like I just want to carry less crap. And I have a basic med kit in here. This is a priority one holster. I got this because I didn't want to get a Safariland for my my SIG P320. This is super cheap, but it's super nice. There's no latch on it. I don't need to defeat some sort of mechanism in order to draw. It's just a Kydex retention holster, so super simple. I just need to adjust it to the right retention in order to use it properly. It hasn't fallen. The gun hasn't fallen out. It's been super nice. It worked for what it's supposed to do. Yeah. Other than that, S-Tech mag pouch, super minimalist. I don't put anything on here. Shell timer.
Sure.
For the range, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really. I do have this leg strap. This isn't from any company. I just made this with nylon that I had. Super ghetto, but it really works. It hasn't fallen apart on me because this is. I think I got this off of my Cry JPC. Extra nylon that I had.
That's probably how leg straps started to begin with, honestly.
Yeah. So I ordered this buckle off of some Korean site that sold buckles, and
sure.
And yeah, it worked great. I didn't have a way to stitch this so that it would hold, so I put rubber bands on here so that if it does stretch, it just kind of stops it from
sure.
From loosening up. And then I had Velcro on here, so yeah, it keeps it from coming off. So it's super ghetto, but it really does work.
That's the Asian in you, man.
Yeah,
just make
sure.
stuff work.
For sure. Yeah, but I really do like this belt. It's super light, minimalist. I really like the fact that most belts, as I'm sure you know, if it has 2 layers, the Velcro is facing in towards you, and that creates a lot of chafing. Whereas this, it has the softer part so that it's not rubbing against your body. It does come with a downside where the Velcro is facing out. So when you're actually pulling the inner belt out of your pants, it rubs against the belt holder. So that can kind of ruin your pants, but if you're careful with it, it shouldn't really matter. But it's been really nice owning this.
Yeah, there's always going to be a trade-off anytime you use Velcro type stuff, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
It's really, really just the way it is, man. For sure. Well, it sounds like you are moving away from your military doctrine and just trying to go for as minimalist as possible. You know?
Yeah.
You're probably from just carrying all that crap around you all the time.
I don't want to carry crap. I really don't.
So it'll be interesting to see what your PC is like then when you bring that up.
So I don't have a lot of reasons to wear my plate carrier as of late. And secondly, I don't have plates in here as of right now, which is one of the reasons why I'm not going to be wearing this when there's no plates in here. I'm just going to look stupid doing that. But the setup was a lot more bulkier than it is right now. I kind of minimized it. I don't know if you could see, but there were a bunch of stuff on here. There's still a bunch of stuff on here that I don't need, especially this antenna right here. I'm not going to be running comms as a civilian, so yeah, I'm definitely going to be taking this off. I don't need flex cups as a civilian. I most likely don't. In fact, I probably won't be wearing a plate carrier as a civilian unless I'm training or I'm AIing for Mike for law enforcement, or not that civilians shouldn't own plate carriers. I think they should, and I'm not just saying that. I truly believe that they should, but at the same time, you're not going to be carrying this around all the time. You're not going to be having this on your nightstand, and when an intruder comes in, you're not going to unvelcro your JPC and then put it on when you could actually be wasting precious time.
Right.
So within that application, I probably there's only going to be a handful of times that I'm actually wearing this. So I've been trying to toy with different ways of setting this up. I definitely don't need this, because this is more of a military application where you're putting a GPS device or nav device on here more than anything. As a civilian, I definitely won't be doing that.
So was that carry a remnant from your time in?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So that so that carried over then.
Yeah, for sure. So like I've been stripping it out. So yeah, things are definitely going to be changing from where it's at now. So it actually might be more interesting talking about why I set it up the way I did.
Yeah.
For my military service.
Yeah.
So when it comes to tourniquets, I'm sure you heard about this in your career. When it comes to tourniquets, you want to have it in a spot that you can reach with both hands, and you want redundancy when it comes to tourniquets. A lot of times, I'm pretty sure it still applies. You want to carry the number of tourniquets you carry is equal to the number of limbs you have, which is around 4, right? So you would carry on some on your plate carrier, your belt, even in your uniform, your what pouch do you call it? The big pouch on the cries. I forget what you call it in English.
The front one on your thigh. That one.
Yeah.
No, I guess the cargo pocket.
Yeah, cargo pocket. Yeah. So we have a different wording for it. It's a weird name. It's called kompang jumani. Jumani is pocket. Kompang is these little rice biscuits that they give you in the military. Yeah, that's where you would put your rice biscuits. That's why it's called kompang jumani. So
that's a interesting tidbit right there.
Yeah. And then flex cuffs, obviously, if you're trying to marshal unknowns or tangos, threats, whoever you're cuffing, that's why you have cuffs on here. Bungee cords, there's multiple applications for bungee cords, but if you're, I kind of set it up the way I did it right now. I used to have a longer one on here that I would use to retain my rifle, so that it's kind of snug, more so than using, a sling. I would retain it with this bungee cord, especially when you're fast roping or what have you, or climbing a ladder. You want that retention stuck to your the rifle, not swinging all over the place, even with a sling on it. Right now, I mean, slings have been good enough where you can cinch it down so that it's stuck to your body, but a bungee cord kind of adds to the redundancy of cinching it down to your body.
It's just a little bit extra retention.
Yeah, for sure.
When you're doing dynamic movements like that, I guess.
Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah.
I have a knife on here, just a standard knife, nothing special. Obviously, primary is rifle, secondary is pistol, and then tertiary is a knife, and then it goes to hands. Not that it's, I mean, in terms of escalation of force, not escalation of force, but in terms of firepower, obviously a knife is better than hands, but it doesn't mean you can't go from pistol to hands or a rifle to hands or what have you.
Sure.
Those are interchangeable, depending on the situation. But having a knife here it just helps out, not just for self-defense or a CQD kind of scenario where you're more in close quarters. You're not using your rifle, but you're using a knife. I probably won't. Within our SOP, we won't be using this to kill someone. You know what I mean? So I think it aids in. Sometimes you just gotta, maybe cut a cord, cut a line, and there's different applications for that, and you need a cutting device. And this just allows you to have that ready access to a cutting tool.
And it's always right side for you guys, your dominant hand?
Yeah, dominant hand. It just works that way. I mean, some people will put it on the opposite side so that they can grab it on their opposite side for a stabbing motion, but you can do the same on your dominant side as well.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it really depends on your preference. But more often than not, it was customary that we'll have our radio pouches here, which I took off because I'm not going to be running radio pouches as a civilian.
Right.
But I had a radio pouch here. And I don't want to put a knife next to my radio pouch, so I put it here. Some people put it on their belts, which is super cool. Yeah, some people carry 2 knives on their setup. It really depends. And I'm not really a huge knife guy, so.
Once again, folks, John's giving more, feedback that it's preference. There's no one and done answer. Preference and mission set, right?
Yeah. So long as you're not doing anything overtly dangerous for yourself or your teammates, or anybody around you that you don't want to hurt, I think it's a good rule of thumb to do it so that it's less cumbersome for you, and it just allows you to do the thing that you're trying to do rather than being, going against you, because you don't want to work around your gear. You want your gear to work for you, right? You hear that often within the industry. I think it really makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there are tools for your use, they're not something that you have to fight over just to be able to use the benefit of. No, you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
So I used to have a push to talk here. This is all the wiring for the antenna, which I'm going to be taking off because I don't need it. I think that's pretty much it. These are the, the tacos?
Yeah, the HSGI.
Tacos, yeah. High-speed gear tacos. I modified them a little bit because I wanted the top retention. But I might do away with that because in the Korean SEAL teams, we had this for waterborne stuff where we wanted extra retention on our mags. And then when we're doing CQB, we'll probably kind of move this aside so that we have ready access to our mags, so we're not pulling tabs while we're clearing rooms. That's pretty much it. I think that's
interesting. Interesting that you opted for Kiwis on your belt line, but the tacos are on the plate carrier side.
Yeah. I mean, the Kiwis, it was our SOP to have extra retention on our belt system as well, but for the Kiwi, that was more of a decision when I transitioned over to the civilian side. So
I see. Interesting. I think we discussed before too, but talk about helmets.
Oh yeah.
You have your helmet around too?
Yep. So this is a non-ballistic helmet. It's Team Wendy. It's extra large. I think the size is on here. I have a big head, big old Asian head. So I went with the extra large, and I took out certain padding on the side because Asians traditionally have wider heads. So I took some padding out. I wear a 7.5 or 7.25 inch hat, if that's a reference point for your viewers on how big my head is. But, so basic setup. I have a Hellstar what is it, strobe,
Mm-hmm.
batteries. I told you I don't have MVGs. These are actually fake. I bought this in South Korea for a photo shoot, and I just kind of have this as a placeholder and
Sure.
as a weight system. I have my Peltor contacts on here. Traditionally, like within the teams, we want our comm system inside the helmet rather than on the helmet because, when you're taking your helmet off, which we often do, we don't like wearing helmets. It's super cumbersome. It's heavy. There are times where we will take our helmet off. We still want to be comms on. So right now, this setup is more something that I'm just toying with, not necessarily what I strictly used in the military. So it's a basic setup. I have a cover on because I did notice there's a bit of a shine on the actual helmet. And just as a lower signature, I don't want light bouncing off of my helmet. Not that it does a lot, but I've heard that there's a coating on this and it does come off later down the line and it shines even more. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to mitigate that with the cover. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And when it comes to straps, we don't always strap on. So when it comes to, there's certain applications where we would actually use the chin strap, and then certain applications where we wouldn't use the chin strap. So again, like I think I explained in my previous episode where I kind of went, explained my backstory, but part of what I explained in that episode, I said that the Korean military generally, we don't have combat experience because the Korean military is very much risk averse and don't want to send our guys in harm's way when the guys are super motivated to be in harm's way. That sounds kind of weird, but we actually want to be in the fight.
Right.
But the government doesn't, or the military doesn't want us to be in the fight because they don't want to create a whole, the drama behind that. So a lot of the things that we learn, it's secondhand SOPs and TTPs that we learn from US Special Operations, which is super valuable. Because, honestly, I've mentioned this to Mike on his podcast a while back. It's a big honor to earn the right to, it's a huge privilege to have that source of information, those SOPs and TTPs that were made in blood without having to shred an ounce of blood. There's nothing better than building up your military based on a military that's actually in the fight, long sustained combat, which the GWAT has been. It recently closed out with the withdrawal of Afghanistan, but that sustained fight came at a cost. But the most current SOPs and TTPs are present in the US, nowhere else. No other country holds an SOP and TTP that's on par with America, essentially. I truly believe that. I know there are extremely high-level guys in different countries, but at the same time, no other country has been in sustained combat like the US has. So the reason why I mentioned that is the chin straps. We've never been shot at. We don't have a Korean SEAL that's been shot at with a ballistic helmet. But if you have a chin strap on, you can imagine the amount of force that's going towards your head. If your chin strap is on, your neck might even potentially break. You're gonna get knocked unconscious, and you might potentially lose your life. That's a anecdotal thing that we heard from U.S. Special Operations guys.
Interesting.
That told us, if you have your chin strap on and you get shot in the head, goodbye. You're either knocked unconscious or you're dead because your neck's gonna break. So it's slightly more beneficial. And there's a technique that we use when we had nods on, where we would kind of tilt our head up and look under the nods, which I'm sure you've done. A lot of civilian guys are privy to that information nowadays, because a lot of civilians own nods nowadays. But you can look under the nods and kind of get a better understanding of the natural illumination of your surrounding, and then kind of tilt your head down and look through the nods once again. But it's harder to do that with a chin strap on. So we've sort of done away with wearing chin straps all the time, and we would do it for certain applications. Obviously, if you're doing a helo insertion or fast roping or halo jump out of a plane, that would be a totally different situation. You would obviously have your chin strap on.
Right, that retention, right? So we're going back to retention again.
Yeah. So that's essentially my helmet setup.
Yeah, right on, dude. Yeah, so for you folks that are watching, so John's introduction to me was I reached out to him researching helmets for specifically and how in their relation to Asian heads. So if you been following my channel at all, or actually any of my social media, I have a video out on Asian Fit Eyepro because that's a thing. And
sure.
The subsequent follow-up to that was to research helmets, because I found that at least for me and from speaking with other people, the data I've collected is that Asian heads tend to be bigger this way, but we are flatter front to back. So for John's situation, which seems to be correct and consistent with what I found, is in Asian fit is usually large, extra large for the helmet, and then you would change the padding on the side in order to get that thinner profile and not get tension headaches from being squeezed here. But the front to the back, it has the normal or the thicker pads, depending on your head shape. And conversely, some other folks, they choose to size down by getting a medium large helmet and then thinning out the pads all around. And that's just personal preference at this point. So, but that is interesting. And part of that research also determined that other areas of sports, I guess, so like snowboarding and skiing, they have Asian fit specific helmets for Asia as well, for Asia. and you'll see that's out there. And I'm still collecting the data and researching on this too, but that seems to be the case and seems to be confirmed for John's situation from what he mentioned earlier. So that's John's introduction to me into this world. And of course, he's talked about it here. So yeah, that's pretty cool there. And yours is Team Wendy. I've collected data on Team Wendy as well as OpsCore. OpsCore has changed their sizing nomenclature, I think, but for the most part, it's still roughly the same. But I think their new system has multiple pads that come with it for you to customize now. I think before everybody just went for 4D pads, I think it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So thanks for sharing all that info out there. Let's see. All right. So we'll move on to let's talk about your favorite or nostalgic firearms or items.
I mean, nostalgic, I would say, is something that I shot in the military, which is our primary weapon of choice is HK416 within the Korean SEAL teams. But I think that was due to height rather than the actual application of the weapon system within our unit, because of how the our US counterpart, which is US Navy SEALs, how they were utilizing the 416. It's not a foolproof, a perfect weapon system,
right?
At all. It's super heavy, and there were a lot of complaints. But I think the hype behind it, that's one of the misconceptions that kind of floats around in South Korea that I wanted to debunk, is that the 416 is not a perfect weapon system. And then another one is the Daewoo K1A and the K2. Super interesting weapon system because it's a hybrid between, so it's like a hybrid between an M4 and an AK, right?
It's based on the AR-180 design, I think.
Yeah. So it's clunky, it's quirky, but it kind of works. Yeah, so it's an interesting weapon system, and that's something that I actually want to get hands on here. I actually want to purchase one and play around with it,
Sure.
especially for the Korean audience, because that's their primary weapon, which I'm sure they'll phase out in sometime in the future because
Sure.
the U.S. military is phasing out the M4. So that's going to be super interesting. But yeah, that's a nostalgic weapon system that I have near and dear in my heart.
So we may not be able to help you locate a K1 or K2 specific because those are pre-bans for the most part, but you know, we can at least get you a DR200 that you can flip around and convert over.
Right.
So that's close. I know that there are a few companies that have imported the Rock's new handguard for the K2s. For them over there, so they're M-locked now, so you can use that. And I do have a buddy who's had barrels remade, so the US versions were like 1 in 12 twist 17-inch barrels or something like that. And he's had the 1 in 7 twist 16-inch or whatever barrel length that you want, so we can work on that when you find your K2, you know, to modernize it, if you will. Yeah, that'll be cool, man. Yeah, you know, it's I kind of expected that answer too, actually, the woo, and that's like kind of like an every Korean thing.
yeah, for sure.
I guess, what about the DP51, the pistol? Did you get any experience with that too?
So I think the nomenclature in South Korea is the K5.
Yeah, the pistol, correct. The K5.
Yeah, I hate that pistol. It sucks. It really sucks.
It's a weird action, man. Like, seriously.
The recoil management on it, like, for some reason I can never get it down. I really can't. Like, everything else, even the 226, which felt clunky at the time, and single action, double action, you're having to add something to your actual technique when you're using that weapon system, because you're decocking it, and I don't need to get into the details, but I just, the K5, for some reason, it just never stuck with me.
It feels very Cold War.
Yeah, it really does.
Like, it really does. Like, it kind of fits in the same category that CZs are right now. You know, like, CZs, even though they're quasi modern, they still feel very Cold War. And I think that's how the Daewoo is, except the Daewoo or the K5 never modernized this stuff. I guess Lionheart Industries imported a few and modernized them, but it's still that same weird tri-action thing that's going on. I've owned one for a while, and you know, and really the only reason I bought it was for my my Concealemnt, basically, because he was like, when he was in the military back then, I was like, okay, well, I bought this gun, let's go shoot it, right? Let's go reminisce and stuff. But he was like, I don't want it. So I was okay. So I got rid of the pistol, and there it goes, man. That's interesting. Any other honorable mentions or things that you look forward to that you kind of wanted as like firearms for yourself when you came back, rather?
So I think in training I used MP5s. I love that gun. MP5, it's like a toy gun. I just really enjoyed shooting the MP5, and I just like the manipulation of the MP5 is super fun, and we used to see it in movies a lot in the 90s and the early 2000s. So that kind of got phased out in Hollywood as well.
Sure.
But the MP5 is such a cool looking gun, and it shoots like a toy. So I really enjoyed the MP5. So I would like to own one, but obviously, I don't know, man. Like, I don't like the pistol brace. It just looks really weird to me. But I'm gonna have to get over it because I don't want to be filing any paperwork with the FTA.
Well, I mean, luckily those, unless you're seeking an actual HK version, at least the clones are getting more viable nowadays. And if you just want that aesthetic and that manipulation and battery of arms, then I'm sure that you can make it happen. Really. All right, John, thank you for that information. I'm sure we'll get you that MP5 in the DU at some point. Moving on to the logic and growth phase of the interview. So your philosophies, the logic, your influences behind your decisions, like where you were back then to where you are now, what are those influences and those thought processes behind that? Granted, understanding you're new but not new back into this world.
So, I mean, I guess the military application of firearms and the civilian application, there's overlaps, but it can be very different. So I think learning the civilian application and how it works in my life and in my routine has been quite interesting for me. We were talking about concealed carry. That's something I never experienced in the military, and actually being able to carry, actually learning the laws, because we don't have to think about laws in the military. We're using those weapons because we're allowed to, at least within the military application. But in the US, if you're not at least somewhat savvy in terms of rules and regulations and firearms laws, you can get into a heap of trouble. Like the what is it? The NFA, National Firearms Act, like that. It there's a steep learning curve for someone that didn't know anything about it. But at the same time, the community is super welcoming, super eager to, sometimes too eager, but they're super welcoming and able to drop the knowledge on that and kind of spread their knowledge on what to do and what not to do, and that's been super cool. But it's been a wild ride seeing the similarities and differences and the nuances and even some of the misunderstandings, because a lot of civilians tend to base things off of what special operations guys are doing when they shouldn't, because they're not in special operations, which isn't to poo-poo on who they are or poo-poo on civilians, but like that's literally not your application. You won't be using it in the same manner because you don't have a mission set. You're a civilian. You're not clearing your house to kill someone. You're clearing your house to defend your house and your loved ones and your own life. So it's a very, the tactics are different. Obviously, the shooting component is very much the same and how you shoot your weapon. But in terms of why you're doing things, certainly changes because of essentially your AO area of operation, which honestly, as a civilian, you're not operating, but you're kind of operating.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, because we're talking about, you're absolutely correct. That's a very important thing that's not really touched, right? Because we're talking about military applications. You're breaching, you're an assaulter, you're going in. There is that specific mission, and granted, for a home defense situation, for what you're doing, even if you're rifle up and stuff, you are in a defensive position. Even if you are searching and intending to engage, you're still defending your base at that point. It's not the same application as you going straight in and it's just like your balls to the wall clearing rooms to get your target objective. So you're absolutely correct on that, and there it sounds very similar, but there is a difference. There is a difference, and I think that what a lot of people do is they fuse the lines together and they blend it all, or they get offended too when people try to explain that there is a difference to it. It's, I guess, going back to human nature, man. People, they think too critically sometimes, or not critically enough, and sometimes there's a fine line there too. Man, right on, dude. No, it's pretty cool that you're thinking about what you've learned. And granted, you are in a very unique situation where you're learning everything, but you're kind of a mature adult with experience in life. And so you can think about this stuff methodically versus like me when I was coming up, I was like, oh shit, guns are cool. And, you know, I had to go through all these mistakes and hurdles and fumbling through like the misinformation, kind of like what you're trying to do with the South Korean side, right? With Redcell. And the misinformation out there in the public sector, or at least in the commercial world, is insane. And like you said, sometimes people are too eager to help, and a lot of times those people that are overly eager to help give you the wrong information.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to legalese, as well as, you know, and sometimes it's application of equipment. You know, like when you're a newbie, you just ask somebody, well, I need a gun, I don't know what to get, and you ask somebody, automatically they give you like 5 or 6 different guns without any type of analysis on you as an individual and what you're doing. They just go Glock 19 right off the bat. It's like, well, I can't reach the magazine release on Glock 19. You know, it's like, it's stuff like that. And that's a problem, and I think we have to change that mentality as a community, hopefully by more education on more types of conversations like this, to where we change that mindset to where it's let's look at it not just firearms, but let's look at life in a methodical manner. You know, in what context are we answering this question when the question comes up? I think that's important. That would probably make us probably a less angry society.
For sure.
You know, so when somebody asks you a question, you're not going to be so offended off the bat by somebody asking a question. You're like, well, why are they asking me this question? So right on, dude. It's good. I think we talked about this prior to, but you mentioned watching my Squib video. And learning about more information on Squibs, because in the military application you guys weren't taught that, right? Let's get into that conversation.
So my first experience with Squibs was as a civilian, and that was my only experience. That was during the ammo shortage, so there were a lot of QC issues with ammo, like you were alluding to offline when we were talking about it. Like in the military, because ammo is up to a certain standard. Korea's not a part of NATO, but we do still have a standard when it comes to our ammo, and I never experienced Squibs personally. I haven't heard of anyone experiencing Squibs within the military, so I felt very stupid not knowing what Squibs were when it actually happened. And when it did happen, I just automatically defaulted to a tap rack bang procedure because I thought it was a malfunction, which was, obviously, knowing what I know now, it was super dangerous. Obviously I had iPro on. Actually, I don't think I had iPro on. I actually don't think I had iPro on at the time. So it was all the more dangerous. I didn't have gloves on. Well, obviously I had ear pro on. But yeah, like just thinking back now, it makes me wonder why the military or any other institution doesn't kind of teach it, at least like skim over it.
Right.
Because it is a thing that commonly does happen. Knowing what I know now, it happens more often than people think within the civilian sector. And actually being able to understand and learn what it sounds like, what it feels like when you're shooting that weapon system is super valuable, because you don't want to make a catastrophic mistake that's going to hurt you or someone around you.
Right. No, you're absolutely correct. You know, and it's there are a lot of factors that can affect ammunition, you know, environmental factors, water, moisture, snow, really just old bad ammo. Sometimes machine malfunctions, and it's not putting powder down there. And especially like when John's situation, and actually the Squibs in my videos were reloads, but in that video, it's also noted that this can also happen to factory new ammunition because sometimes machines make mistakes, and QC is there, but they don't check every round. It's simply the fact that they're usually batch checked, and it's something that's important. And one of the things that we were talking about doing was a follow-up video for rifle squibs, because we only did pistol. And John was mentioning to you offline was that, well, some weapon systems, they do give you a cleaning rod, and part of that was to extract unextracted casings.
Right.
And at the same time, that can also be used for knocking out squibs. And I mirrored you that I was unsure why in military doctrine squibs aren't discussed, or it's not noted, or at least from the folks that I've spoken to. Mm-hmm. And in my time through my government training, same thing. Our doctrines, we were never taught about squibs either. We were taught about malfunction clearing. We learned about revolvers for some awful damn reason, but at the same time, we squibs were never talked about. So right. It's a very, very interesting topic, and I think that's something that the community should talk about more, because it's dangerous. We should really understand our weapon systems and the potential types of malfunctions that can occur. So yeah, that's pretty interesting thing there. But maybe that might be a topic for Redcell for you.
Yeah,
when the time comes up. Speaking of that squib portion, moving on to the shame phase of the interview process, I know that your firearms experience as far as variety is kind of limited there, but at least we can do the one or two decisions or things you've experienced coming up in this learning curve that you're kind of like embarrassed about.
I mean, there's a lot to be embarrassed about. No
Sure.
one's perfect. Even in special operations, the benefit we have in the military is that it's not shown to the public.
Sure.
We're not on social media, at least while we're in active duty, on active duty. And obviously there's a lot of mistakes that are made behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, when it specifically when it comes to firearms, there's a lot of the benefit of learning firearms in the military. There's downsides to it, like it being too doctrinal, too kind of like trying to fit everything in a box, when there are certain nuances to certain things, especially tactics.
Right.
But the benefit of it is everything is purpose driven. And I think when we first joined the military, we had this idea of what firearms are, because at least in my case and most of my peers' case, the extent of our experience when it comes to firearms was movies. And the way we hold it, the way we shoot it, everything was based off of movies. So when you get a lot of these new guys in selection, it looks so stupid. Like if you see the firing line, the stance that they had, the grip that they had, there's a lot of work to be done, and you have no idea how stupid some of these candidates look, me included. And obviously the cadre goes ahead and fixes all of that so that we're on par with our SOP and TTP. But yeah, you would not believe how stupid we look, even though we're quote unquote Korean SEALs or whatever that means. And I would imagine it to be the same when it comes to Green Berets or US Navy SEALs or what have you. If you're in a selection process, these new guys that have zero experience, they probably look super stupid when they're first learning their weapon system. But I just remember that and remember how inexperienced and how stupid I knew I looked, because I was looking left and right, and all my peers looks pretty stupid. They have this weird, bent over stance where their center of gravity is all tilted forward, and their grip is all wrong because we weren't doing the C clamp. Everyone was holding the mag well, which that's a big no-no, unless you've been holding the weapon system for a while and you've been clearing it for hours, where that's understandable because you're fatigued and you want to maintain and stay in the fight, so you can hold the mag well so that you can prolong the clearing of the runes. But yeah, so there's a time and place for that, but it does look stupid. So yeah, I kind of think back to that moment.
That's pretty funny, dude. But it's like no one can fault you guys for that because you just didn't know any better, honestly. What about pet peeves for you? Like knowing what you know now, things that you see in this industry, pet peeves.
So I think I come back to what I was saying about the benefits of learning within a doctrine or learning within an institution, whether that's military or LEO, is that everything is purpose driven, hopefully. It's not always the case, but everything is somewhat purpose driven, and everything comes back to, would you do this in real life? Would you do this if there was actually a bad guy there? Would you do this if it was a two-way range, not a flat range? So when you put yourself within that mindset constantly, because the cadre is there to do just that, ask that question, everything clicks back to a purpose-driven. Every SOP, TTP is purpose-driven, right? So my pet peeve is civilians not asking that question to themselves or to each other to build up their capability, where everything is purpose-driven and not LARPing. And again, like, LARPing has its time and place, because I like gear. I'm a gearhead. I love gear. I love diving into the specs and whatnot. I'm not caught up on all the nomenclature or all the different gear that's out there, but at the same time, I like diving into things like that and kind of understanding the nuances of a particular thing. But I don't want to be caught up in just that, because that's a very small portion. And I do want to understand, especially with the responsibility of owning a firearm as a civilian, I want to understand the application of it within my life, within my surrounding, within the patterns of my life, within who I'm with, and how I'm training. So if it's not built around that, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing the people around you a disservice. So my biggest pet peeve is people that are not asking that question on top of their LARPing, because they can LARP if they want. Everyone has the freedom to LARP, and everyone has to hoard gear or buy gear, even though their probably credit score is super low, but they're owning.
There's that factor.
yeah. So yeah. They can do that. I mean, they have the freedom to do that. That's why we live in one of the greatest country on earth, because we have that freedom. And if you can't do that, you might as well live in a different country. But at the same time, on top of that, if that's the extent of your training, if that's the extent of your understanding and your application of your firearms that you own, I think you're definitely doing yourself a disservice.
I agree, man. Upgrade practically is what I usually tell folks. Buy and upgrade practically if you even need to upgrade, and really ask yourself, like, does it really matter? Things like that. Is it a necessity? Does it really matter? Like the whole gear arguments that we see very frequently, it goes really overboard over XYZ item versus ABC item. Like, does it really matter? Does it do the same thing? Yes, they do. Like the conversation we had earlier about EOTech versus Aimpoint, they both do the same thing. They're optical aiming devices, and they both will get you on target, assuming you're doing your part. And that's pretty much it. They both serve that purpose and both do it well. So does it really matter which one you get? No, not really. So you're absolutely correct. Just pick one that suits your fancy and go for it, man.
Sure.
Right on, man. Sage wisdom, as usual.
I think one thing to add to that is that Bruce Lee quote where it's like, I don't fear the man that practices 10,000 kicks But I fear the man that practices one kick 10,000 times.
Right.
It's the same thing. If you're owning if you own 10 different firearms and you're not actually applying that to your life, why own it? Unless you're a collector, and I get that aspect of it, but at the same time, if you're not practicing with it, if that's your gun, for whether it's a truck gun or a home defense gun, if you're not actually applying it to your life, applying it to your training, why own it? I'd rather own one pistol or one rifle that I use constantly and am familiar with, rather than owning 10 different ones for every specific application, when it's slim to none that I'm going to be using it for that application. But that's just me. I'm not knocking anyone that has different setups, because if I had the money, I probably would do the same thing. But the Asian in me won't allow me to buy different setups like that, because I know I can go overboard, because there are experiments that I want to do in terms of long range. Is definitely something that I want to get into. But at the same time, in a realistic application where it's home defense or self-defense, that's long range is something that's on top of my priority list. So
it's totally understandable. And, I absolutely understand what you're saying from a practicality standpoint, right? We're talking about being rational and being practical with what you're doing. And I totally get you there too, especially the Bruce Lee quote too. And the philosophy behind that is to get reps in with that specific platform, right? And I totally get that. Because you're going to know things about that particular platform that you're not going to know if you keep flopping around between different platforms, right? And I'm a victim of that too, because of my constant testing of different applications. Is I don't know where my dopes are, because I'm constantly moving. Ammo is always changing. The quality of ammo is always changing right now. Environmental factors apply. So just because you think that for you folks that are out there that's starting out, just because you think you can zero a gun, put it away, and come back and it'll be zero again, it's probably not going to be the case. Things change. Even the weather conditions is going to affect your zero, really. So yeah, it's important that the platform that you're going to use as a tool for the tool that you're going to, I guess, engage with or defend yourself with really should be the one that you have the most time with and the one that you're most familiar with. And I think that's what John is trying to say. So right on, man. Right on. So shame phase is over. We're going off to the closing phase of the interview, home stretch right here. Any final advice or recommendations for the folks that are watching, John?
I don't know if I'm in the position of giving advice, because I'm a newbie into this.
You give the newbie advice.
Yeah. If I could give advice to newbies, again, I come back to it being purpose driven. So like every piece of gear that you buy, down to the smallest things, I think it needs to be purpose driven. We were talking about lights. I don't want high lumens on my flashlight, because especially in close proximity where there's a lot of white walls, I'm gonna end up blinding myself if I'm using that flashlight more often than not. So within that application, I think the detail matters, even to how you set up your sling, how you tape it up, how you treat it. If there's slack, is it perfect? Have you run it within different different positioning of the gun? I think if you don't do your due diligence on every piece of gear, you're doing yourself a disservice, because more often than not, I see a lot of people moving on to the next new piece of gear before they fully understand one piece of gear. So I think the only advice that I can give is just if you buy one, run it till the wheels fall off, and then you'll have a deeper understanding of that piece of gear, so that you can move on to the next one without doing yourself a disservice.
totally solid advice, man. I wish I had that when I started off. I wouldn't have my boxes and drawers full of spare parts lying around everywhere.
Yeah.
That's definitely a real thing, and I hope that you don't have to go there. It is kind of a rite of passage, just like with holsters and stuff too. Is once you start to get into your concealed carry mode more, you're going to find that you're probably going to be trying a bunch of different stuff. Granted, you guys have your own line, but you're going to be testing that too to see if you like it, and you're going to eventually develop your own carry techniques and carry style and preferences. But benefits you have all these cool people around you to help guide you along the way. Of course, I'm always a resource. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me too. I'm at least coming from a civilian side, I can at least guide you on the gear horror stuff. So awesome. That pretty much concludes the O.P.P interview for featuring John Park, aka Kimchi Seal. Feel free to go out to his Instagram and check him out. If you like this type of content, feel free to like the video. If you have questions for myself or John, or just general comments, comment below, let us know. Share this video with anyone who you can think could help. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I hope that we've earned it. And so eventually we'll probably see you for the next few videos, hopefully. Other than that, thank you all for watching. John, it's been a pleasure again. Thanks for coming back to the channel. Go ahead and say your goodbyes to the audience.
Yeah, thanks for watching all the way through. I think this episode was longer than the previous one.
I think so. I'd probably say so because it's more fun because we're talking about gear.
Yeah, for sure. It was super interesting talking about this because I never had to justify my purchase to someone because I'm always thinking about it by myself. So it was super interesting talking to you about it because it's the first time that I'm I don't know if that's the right phrasing, but justify my purchase, literally.
Right. Well, I mean, it reinforces it too because it makes you think about it. And sometimes I find that when someone's asking me why I did things, sometimes I'll find that I wouldn't say second guess, but I'll say I'll reevaluate and think that maybe I don't really need that at all, and that's kind of part of the process of what we do. So awesome. Once again, John, thank you for coming back to the channel, and you folks at home, thanks for watching. So we'll see you on the next video. Bunny Operator signing out.